Right, welcome to a new stream, everyone. I just posted also on my Instagram that we are live in a new live stream. This week is going to be a bit different, so I am going to edit whatever you want me to show in Photoshop. So I have quite a bit of experience with Photoshop because I've been editing so many hours, but probably like we are in like plus 10,000 hours so far when it comes to me editing in Photoshop. I've been doing it for about 5 years. Lately, not as much as I used to. I've been like sticking a bit more to 3D, but I still like to think that there are always new things to learn about Photoshop. And since I've devoted so much time to this program over the years, I thought it would be a really good opportunity to show all of you a bit of the things that I have learned. I will wait for a while to people to join to the stream, and then we can start. And the way how this will work is that you will just ask in the chat what you want me to show in Photoshop, and then I will show it. If there aren't a lot of suggestions in the chat, then I might as well just explain some random stuff that I think is helpful in Photoshop. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. We'll see how many people will join the stream. And this is very spontaneous, I know, but I thought, why not? Michelle is currently in Turkey, so I'm alone at home, so I have pretty much all the time in the world. I will probably keep this a bit more of a short stream, about an hour or so, because usually I just go overboard and do like 3 to 4 hours, and I definitely don't want to go on for that long today. So this is going to be about an hour long stream, hour and 15 minutes, something like that, and that's it. Hello everyone who has joined already. Hey, it's off topic though, but what's the name of the tripod you have to hold your camera? So I think you mean these ones. So I'm using actually this one for my camera as well right now. And this is just a normal microphone stand from Frameworks. It says Gator here, Frameworks Gator, and these work pretty well. The only thing with the camera on top is that it is a bit unstable. Like if I start to shake this, it would probably fall quite easily. So I try to keep it like a bit under my PC, and that way it doesn't fall. So I can't recommend it as like a good stand for your camera, because this is meant to be just for the microphone. But yeah, this is basically how it is, and I have quite a lot of new gear actually here that I haven't really shown that much. The office is pretty much ready. I can actually show some images because I just finished the office. So wait a second, I will show some images of the office here now. I also posted these on Instagram. You can't see it yet, but just wait a second and I'll show some of these. So here we go. Okay, is there any way to match realistically contrast, brightness, fade that background has to subject, and any tips regarding this? Do you just mean like basic blending, how to blend objects together? I will get into all of that soon, but first I'm gonna still wait for a while for people to join, and then we can go from there on. Let me actually quickly come here to here. So here we can now see some images of the office. This is my setup. I have the Stream Deck here, which I'm basically using just for streaming purposes. Basically, the way how I planned this is that on my Stream Deck, I have a stream folder, and when I click launch, it opens YouTube for me, it opens OBS for me, it opens all the necessary programs that I need for streaming. Then next to the launch button, I have a start stream button, and then I have basically the different scenes. So I can come back to the chatting screen, and then I can click back to this view. I also have a microphone mute button, so hear anything, and now you can hear me again. I also have a tweet button here, so if I click on this tweet button, it sends a tweet immediately out to Twitter. And then I can see the amount of viewers in the stream here on the Stream Deck as well. I can open websites, test my internet speed. It's just a bunch of like useful stuff. You don't really need a Stream Deck to start streaming. I just thought it would motivate me probably a bit more to do it if I actually have like professional gear for it. So here in the image you can see pretty much everything. It's all cable managed. All the cables are under here the desk, and these are real oak wood desktops. I have 2 screens, and the reason why I go for 2 screens always is because I just like the feeling of having two separate sides. With an ultrawide, you would sort of have to resize tabs, and most games are not optimized for ultrawide either way. So I never really cared for ultrawide screens that much. So I always go for two screens. I also have a little clock here, and the only cable that I need to go down is this white cable here, and this allows me to adjust the height of this table because this is an adjustable desk. Then I made this little backboard here that you can also see in the stream here. And then we have this long shelf. Actually, I can show some more images. So this is my setup from the front. I also set actually Photoshop tools to my stream deck, which I'm probably going to use quite a bit in this stream as well. So don't get confused about that. I will try to always tell all the shortcuts and so on if I forget. But yeah, this is how it looks from the front. I also have my audio interface where my microphone is connected under the desk. So everything is looking quite clean. I wanted everything to look clean. So yeah. Then I have my custom PC here that I basically went completely overboard with. I painted all of the, what do you call those in English? I painted all the, not pieces, but the hardware inside with white thermal paint. So I painted the CPU cooler, I painted the motherboard parts and my processor cooler, the IO, and then my GPU. So I painted all of that just to get a bit more of a custom look for it. And I also have the desks from Ergotopia. We're working together with Ergotopia on these desks. And here you can see a bit more of the shelf itself. And here you can see both sides. So this is my girlfriend's Michelle's side and this is my side. We work in the same room, and a lot of people ask us, like, isn't it annoying to work in the same room? And so far we haven't had any issues. And yeah, let me show a bit more. This is a bit wider shot where you can see both of them, and then here you can see both of the setups from the front. And actually, before I start now the Photoshop itself, if you have any questions about our setup, feel free to ask that as well, because I'm more than down to answer any questions. Because when I built this office, or throughout the process of building this office, I got so many questions all the time about this. So if you have any specific questions in mind now, feel free to ask them so you then know what we have here. Just to confirm, how do you spell the name of the camera stand? It's Frameworks. I can write it here. Frameworks. That's how it is. Your brush pack is amazing. Thank you so much. I actually use those brushes myself pretty much in every single image of mine. I'm really happy how they've turned out, and I'm really, really glad that other people are enjoying them as well. There's tens of thousands of people using them in their edits all the time. I'm quite flattered about how useful people have actually found them. So yeah. Do you have any plans for the future on YouTube? I think even reactions to some kind of Photoshop related content with your input would be helpful and interesting for people. Yeah, I think some sort of, I don't know, I guess for me, Photoshop, I guess like starting YouTube for me has been harder because I've already sort of made it on one platform. So moving to another platform, I sort of had this pressure that I really need to perform well on that platform. I'm not talking about numbers, but I'm talking about the quality of the work that I would put there. And since I'm not really that experienced with video at all, and I'm not like super comfortable in front of the camera either, it has been sort of an unpleasant thing at times to sit down in front of the camera and like try to force myself to create something. And I have a bunch of ideas in mind, but so far it has been really, really hard to motivate myself to actually do it, because it is sort of another full-time job if you really start doing seriously. So I've been sort of like thinking of starting it, and then I've again gone further away from YouTube. And I did this stupid video like, why is it so hard to start YouTube? It's on my channel, and pretty much that video concludes all of my thoughts, or includes all of my thoughts about YouTube. It's really hard for me, and I wish I could just like do it like this and go full of like 100% at it. And I know I probably should, because that is sort of the most obvious way to go after doing Instagram for such a long time. It would be nice to like sort of transition from Instagram to YouTube, but yeah, so far I haven't done it. Do I regret it? Maybe at times I do a little bit. But yeah, we'll see what time shows. I probably will like start doing it at some point more, but yeah, right now it has seemed a bit more distance. Actually, the reason why I'm doing these live streams now more often as well is to sort of bring some content to YouTube. So yeah. Hi, been following you for the past 3 years. Love from India. Thank you. We all love you, man. You are amazing. Thanks so much. Then we have Flow. How do you feel about the raising AI algorithms that was released the last few years? Auto-colorize, relight, super resolution, many other that are yet available. Yeah, I love them. I actually use a bunch of AI tools myself nowadays. They are really, really, really helpful, especially for... Let's say you have a really bad quality image and you need to enlarge an image. And actually not only enlarge the amount of pixels, but also the amount of data within the image. And some of the AI tools for stuff like that are amazing nowadays. I also use denoisers and sharpeners for my stuff. And they work magic for wildlife photography. But I haven't used any of the NVIDIAs, for example, where you draw like random colors and then it creates a landscape for you. Like those type of things I haven't done. I have some bit of knowledge of retouching manipulation. Can I do freelancing on Fiverr? I actually know nothing about Fiverr, so I'm not the best person to ask about that, to be honest. But yeah, if there's no questions about the office, I will still put it in you for a while so you can like take a look at it and like get a feeling if there are any questions that you want to ask. Yeah, here are just some images we did for the company Ergotopia about these desks. And that's actually why I took like professional images of the setup as well, because I wanted some cool images for the company. So yeah, there you can see Ergotopia. They're super, super high quality desks from Germany. And I at least really, really enjoy having an adjustable desk. The bumper sound scared the hell out of me. Is it actually loud, the sound? I'm not really sure. It doesn't seem to be super loud on the audio level on OBS, but I've always wondered, like, did I make it too loud? So, yeah. Honestly, Julius, I would say start making vlogs. I have been following you for a couple of years and you have a good vibe. I am sure you do well just making vlogs about your trips. Yeah, but then again, the thing about trips is that I'm not like such a big travel geek that I would be going on trips all the time. Like I spend most of my time at home on my computer. So my like day-to-day life is not like super, super interesting. So I think it would have to be something more so on like the creative side in order for me to like enjoy YouTube. Because if I think about vlogs and traveling, like for me, traveling is only about gaining new experiences for myself. That's why when I'm traveling, I'm not working with companies. That's like why when I travel, I don't really, I mean, I share it on Instagram, but I don't really do anything else with it because I want to stay in the moment while I'm actually like traveling. And if I would have to stress about like, I mean, even if I'm saying that if I have to stress about making vlogs, maybe that tells that like doing vlogs is not what I want to do, because it would probably be a stress factor for me to think about like vlogging at the same time while I am traveling. So I don't know. I have to see. Maybe I should try it one time. I'm actually gonna most likely do a trip with Michelle within the upcoming few weeks. So I should probably give it a go and see how people would like it. I have zero like experience with making vlogs, but that shouldn't be an issue because we have to start from somewhere. What's your business plan for the next 5 to 10 years? I actually don't want to answer a lot of business related questions in this stream. Let's keep it all like sort of creativity based because this is a stream about Photoshop, and talking about Photoshop, we should probably start soon. So yeah, no, it is loud. Okay, yeah, I should probably make the bumper sound then a bit less loud. I see. I understand what you mean. Yeah, it seems easy then. Go for it. If not, no worries. Yeah, I have to see. It's just something, I think I have this weird relationship with YouTube that I'm just postponing it all the time, even though I should just do it. I have all the gear in the world that like anyone could ever need in order to make videos. So it's not about the gear. It's not about sort of not wanting to do it. It's just that I maybe set myself too high expectations for it, and I set too high goals for myself when it comes to the quality of the videos. But yeah, we'll see. But let's now start with the Photoshop stuff. We now did like a 15-minute brief set here before we started. So now for about an hour, I'm gonna be in Photoshop, just showing whatever you want to learn about Photoshop. So I'm gonna change this to the program view, and we will start with Photoshop and whatever you want to learn. I'm gonna use my own images for this, so if there's any, like, of course, if you can ask anything. You can ask me how to use a certain tool. You can ask me how do I achieve certain looks for my images, or how to do, like, whatever comes to your mind. I will show it, as long as it's not like, yeah, show me how you edit a whole image. So I want to do more so like tiny pieces of, like tiny bits and pieces here and there. I'm not going to do a whole full edit here, but I am going to show you whatever you want to see. Like just those small techniques, if that makes any sense. So here we go. Sorry about the bumper sound if it's too loud. How was the change from Photoshop to Cinema 4D? It was actually quite interesting. It's very different, but I feel like my experience with Photoshop helped me like a shit ton with like starting Photoshop, starting Cinema 4D as well. So I would definitely say my transition wasn't as hard as it would probably be for someone who like jumps in it without zero knowledge on photography or editing in general. So yeah, it wasn't too bad. I love 3D. And I was thinking of even maybe doing this as a 3D stream. But then I thought that maybe I will do Photoshop because I feel more comfortable in it. I can explain things way better in Photoshop because I know my way around the program like inside out. So let's start. I will just wait for your questions. And just, yeah, let me know what you want to see. Let's see. Someone said, any discounts on your videos for students? What do you mean, like if you're studying in a university or something like that? What's the best way to select subjects or people with fine hair for new layers? Well, the select and mask is the best technique for this. Unfortunately, I don't know if I have any images with people in them. I probably have to lean to do this from an image from Unsplash. So just give me a second. I will search for an image from Unsplash with hair. Hair. Let's do that. This should be fine. Okay, so now we have a random image from Unsplash here. And I mean, this is a relatively easy image now, but I'll just show what is the best way to cut out hair. So from what I found out, it's like first you should of course do the rough outlining. So you could do whatever tool you want to use for cutting out. The most, of course, best way to do it is with the pen tool. So with the pen tool, you can just click around the outlines here and create a selection. And then after that, you would use the select and mask technique that I'm about to show. But since the outlines here are very, very visible, I can use the quick selection tool. So I can just come here to the quick selection tool and I can select roughly everything. And then I am gonna do a wider selection for the hair. So now here you can see it picked pretty well the outlines here on the edges. But we want to do a bigger selection for the hair, and what you need to do in order to add to a selection is hold shift on your keyboard, and you see this little plus icon appear here to Photoshop. So now I'm going to do a really rough addition to this selection here. I probably should be like, I shouldn't be precise, but I shouldn't like add too much of this white. So just follow the hair like this. And I'm just gonna create an addition to this selection all around. And you don't need like all of the hair. Like don't worry if you can't get like a perfect selection on literally everything, because there's just so much hair usually that if you miss a few strokes, it's fine. So now that we have this, I actually want to create a mask. So I hit here on the bottom right corner to the mask icon, and then cuts the background out for us. But if I zoom in here by holding Option or Alt on the PC, I can zoom in and you can see that we actually have a pretty rough cut here. So here it's fine. We have a really nice selection on the edges because Photoshop is really good at detecting contrast differences between different elements. But for hair, it's a bit trickier. So you need to just create this rough selection first, and then we can move on to the select and mask technique. So let's first off add a black background here. So I would probably just add a black background so you can see how much white we have left here. So first off, let's hit Control and click on the mask. What this does is that it selects or outlines the mask selection here. So if I hit Alt here, you can see that this is our mask. Alt reveals the mask if you click on it. So you can see this is our selection. If I click Control and hit on it, it selects the outlines. Okay, simple as that. And now let's say we want to cut these white parts out of our image. The best way to do this is to come here to the selection tool. So you can click on one of these selection tools, or you can select a shortcut. Actually, the way how I've done it is that on my Stream Deck, I have a shortcut that is designed to open the select and mask tool. You can like set your own shortcuts from from keyboard shortcuts here. So you can come here to keyboard shortcuts and then you can find the select and mask thing and apply, let's say like Control Alt F12, for example, or something, whatever you like remember, you can set it. But if you don't want to do that, then just click on one of these selection tools and then you hit select and mask. And now from here, you need to select this tool here, which is called the Refine Edge Brush tool. And all you need to do is just click here and brush to all of the areas where you see white. And depending on the image, it might pick up like a bit more than necessary, but you can then refine that later if you want to. But I'm now just gonna brush over here and you can see that we're getting a nice selection to all of those white parts. And then we have these different settings here. We can set like different views. I usually keep this on overlay because overlay shows me then the basically areas that are selected on red. But I could do like black and white or on white or like just whatever one of these. I usually use the overlay. And you can see that it doesn't do a perfect job always on all of these spots, but this is super easy to refine later. And we actually have some sliders here that can help us with that as well. Basically, the first thing here is the radius. If I change the radius a little bit here, you can see that we are just like basically increasing the amount of pixels we want this effect to be on. So I usually just like slide this to like 2 or 3 or something like that to have that like radius there. Then we have the shift edge here. And what shift edge does, it basically does what it says. It will shift the edge of the selection that we created there. And in this case, I don't really want a lot of shifting. If I bring it all the way to the right, you can see that we are basically like decreasing the amount of selection we did. But I sort of just want to get rid of this black stuff that we see here. So I'm going to bring it down just a tiny bit like that. And this contrast helps us to cut out even a bit more of those unnecessary parts. So if I bring this contrast up, you can see that this black area here is disappearing even more. And then we have feathering. Feathering basically just feathers the outlines here. I usually try not to use this that much because what happens with feathering is that it gets really soft really quickly and we don't want that. So I usually try to keep this under like 1 pixel. So you can do like 0.5 or something like that. This is purely just based on whatever image you are using. And then with the smooth, I actually just don't use that often. This also smoothens the edges a little bit, so we can just add a bit of that as well. Okay, so I don't think we really have to do much more. There's a bunch of other stuff here, but you usually don't really need anything else. So just use the Refine Edge brush tool here, select the areas around the hair that you want to mask out, and then just hit OK. And this creates a new selection for you here. And all you need to do in order to basically get rid of the white stuff is to, well, usually the way how I do it is a bit stupid. I should probably change this workflow myself a bit. But I usually invert the selection now. So I hit Ctrl-Shift-I, and then I grab my brush tool, and I set my flow and opacity to 100%. And then with black color, I brush around the hair like this. Because now the mask basically never erases anything. It just temporarily hides stuff that is like selected from your image. So when I do it like this, then I have the hair separate. And I could basically now, well, let's for example turn this off. So now you can see that the hair is separate. And if there's any like really weird things going on here, you can further on come here and refine whatever you want. So I definitely would like, this is a pretty bad quality image, by the way, as well. So that's why the result is not as good as we sort of hoped for. But you could then just come here and mask some of these stupid hairs away, because this is just something that we don't really need. And this usually doesn't take long. So in best case scenario, if you have a good quality image and you want to just quickly like get rid of some hair, for some background behind the hair, you can usually do it like within a few seconds. But yeah, then you would just come here, make sure you don't have any flying hairs, and that's it. That looks okay to me. Another technique that I recommend everyone to use is actually blurring the mask itself. So I can come here, let me actually use my Stream Deck for this. So I can't really use it now because I have a different profile there, never mind. So I can come here to the blur tool, and with this blur tool, if I blur the layer mask itself, we are blurring the edges of the mask. Okay, so instead of us blurring the image, we are just blurring the mask, and this makes sure that if I blur here into the image itself, it doesn't get blurred. So this only affects at the edges. So if your result is really choppy and really sharp, you can grab the blur tool, click on the mask itself that we created around the hair, and then you probably shouldn't do 100%, that's a very strong blur, so we can do like 20%, and you can blur a bit of these outlines here. So you can see the difference. If I come close here and I blur, you can see that it just makes the edges a bit blurrier, but it doesn't blur the image pixels itself, only the edges. So this is a really helpful thing. Another thing that a lot of people do is that let me actually go here to, wait a second. I need to see if I can, nope, wait a second. There was this one, I think I need to add it here. Let me go to window and then go to properties. Yeah. So here in the mask properties, probably dock this here. So here in the mask properties, you have this feathering option, and this is also pretty good. You can use this sometimes to blur the edges as well. So if you want a quicker way to do it and you want to do the blur around all of the edges, then you can do it here. I like a bit of modification on my workflow, so that's why I use the blur tool. But if you want to feather the mask selection of PID, you can do it basically from here. So yeah, that's the first thing. So that is how you cut hair out pretty easily. And there are probably multiple ways to do this, but that is the best way I do it. And this has worked for me since the beginning when I started Photoshop. I haven't needed any other sort of techniques to do that. Sometimes I have to say that, like, depending on the quality of the image, the tool doesn't work as well. So if you have a really bad quality image, then the tool does have some like issues with selections. And this is just, if you don't have enough information, then you can't really do it. And there's pretty much no way around that. Another way, basically, let me show you another way. So if you duplicate this and get rid of this mask. So if you want to have a bit of a quicker way instead, you could, for an image that has a lot of contrast difference, use the color range tool. So the color range tool is located here under the select menu. So I can come here to select, and then I can hit color range. And with this, I can create a selection based on the contrast differences in my image. So I can select the hair from here, for example, and let's select the skin, for example, as well. You can see that we are creating a selection here. And with the fuzziness, we can determine how rough the selection is going to be. And then we can select different previews here. We can again do, for example, quick mask, where we can see it in a similar way as we did in the selection tool or the select and mask tool. And then we can do grayscale, which shows us the black and white version of it. And with this, you can adjust it a little bit like this. Let's say, for example, at that point, we can hit OK. And then you can hold Alt or Option on your keyboard and click on the layer mask icon here. And that also, actually, you don't have to hit Alt while you click on it. You just click there, and then it creates this like outline for you. But you can only use this if the contrast difference between the background and the subject is like fairly big. So those are the two techniques I would use for cutting out hair. But let's move on now. I would check on the chat quickly and then move on from there. So let's see. So we were here. What's the best way to select subjects? Okay. What's your favorite tool in Photoshop? I would say the brush tool, naturally, because that's the most versatile tool. You can basically do whatever. You can create whole artworks with only using the brush. What is the best way of matching the colors in manipulation? It's a bit of a broad question. I know what you mean. I will probably show that soon. Someone said, can you please give a brief about all or maybe the important blend modes? That we can definitely do. How you convert image into painting for. Okay, so I will do all of that. Let's start with the blending. I guess for this we just need two different images. Again, should probably use my own images. I actually have to look for an image first. So let's do something Indonesia related. We could do, for example, let me see. I think in Nusa Penida I had some nice images that we could work on. And we're gonna go to Kalinking Beach and then take the images from the beach itself. And I would say we could use something like this. Okay? I'm actually not gonna edit this image at all. This is the raw file. Let's just use this. So let's say we wanna change the sky. We could do a little sky replacement here. I've actually used a similar photo in my course as well, but I'm trying to now think what would be the easiest way to show this to someone who has never seen Photoshop or never used Photoshop before. Maybe you should actually use an image that doesn't have a sun star in it. That would probably be a bit easier. But then again, do we really want it easier or do we want a bit more challenge? I also want one that doesn't have a wave. I could show you how to add a wave into an image that doesn't have one. So let's say you like this image. Actually, this is the perfect image to use. So let's use this instead. So let's say you want to use this image and you can't see a wave here in the distance, but you would like to add one. We can do that. So let's do that. So now we have a really nice starting point. So first off, let's cut the sky out. This is pretty simple. I'm just going to use the color range here. So we can again click on the sky a few times. Actually, we're going to probably have a bit of issues around here. So in order to make this a bit easier for us, I'm going to create a rough selection around the sky already. So now the color range, instead of calculating the differences in terms of color and light from the whole image, it's going to calculate it from the selection. So now when I go to color range, you can see that only this area is going to be affected. So now it's way easier for us to create a selection here. I'm just going to do that. And maybe here we need to refine the selection a bit. Again, I think the quick selection tool is going to be good enough for now. We can refine it a bit later. Then I'm going to hold Alt or Option on Mac, click here, and now we have a sky removed. If I take the paint bucket tool and put whatever color there, you can see that we removed the sky. And this works fairly well most of the time. So this is pretty easy. So I know this is now sky replacement, but sky replacement always includes also blending. So this is pretty much the perfect example to do this with. So let's see. I'm not sure if I actually have my skies downloaded on my, or like in a folder on my PC. It might be that it's on another hard drive, but I really know where that hard drive right now is. So I'm most likely just going to take a sky from my skies folder here. And of course, when you're changing skies, you need to take in consideration the direction of the sunlight. The sun is setting and it's coming here from the left side. So in our image or in our sky image, the sun has to always also be setting to the left side. I think something like this could work. So let me just drag this sky in here. Yes, that should be good enough. And then let's just make sure that the light is actually coming from that side. I actually will make this sky a bit bigger. I'll put it somewhere here. That should be good enough. And don't worry about this now. I will fix this just in a few moments. I'll rasterize this quickly. And I will just expand this. So a good way to expand in Photoshop something is to hit M on your keyboard or click here on the rectangle selection tool. And all you need to do in order to stretch a part of this image is to select and then hit Ctrl T. And while holding Shift, you can like expand something. You don't want to do it too much because then it's like clearly visible. But in this image, I can do it a little bit and that shouldn't like be a problem. So right now we have the sun coming here from the left side. We have expanded the sky to fit the whole scene here. And then we need to start blending. First thing I usually do when I start blending is focus on the overall blending, not on the edges. The edges we will refine later, but to focus on the overall blending, the easiest way to do this is to duplicate your sky. Okay? And you duplicate your sky, and all you need to do in order to start blending this is go to the filter section. You will blur and Gaussian blur your sky a lot. So we will just Gaussian blur this some amount, something like that, and hit OK. And now because it's a bit faded here on the edges, I'm gonna again enlarge it a little bit. So we're gonna do something like this. This usually works pretty well for blending. So let's just expand this whole thing. Only thing we need is like a bit of a shift here in the color, okay? And now what I want to do is hold Alt or Option on Mac and click in between these two layers. What this does, it clip masks it, and clip masking means that the layer that is above the layer basically that is above this layer and is clip masked to it will only affect the information that is inside this layer. It's a bit complicated probably to understand, but basically the simple thing or in the simplest form, it just means that whatever is in here will fill the shape of the layer below. So this is what clipping mask does, and I can do it in multiple different ways. I can come here to this layer and I can create a clipping mask, but the simple way to do that is hold Alt or Option and then click in between the layers. And now all I need to do is come here to the blending modes, and I will set this to multiply. And don't worry, it looks horrible right now, but this is sort of the initial step that we will do in order to start blending these images together. This basically what this does, it just takes the color information from the sky and then it applies this color information on the layer itself with the multiply filter. And this is a really easy way. Sometimes you can try different modes. Overlay usually looks horrible to start with. I usually just do multiply. So multiply basically darkens the colors and blends them inside the information that is below here. So now if I want to start blending this, the first step I would do is hit Alt or Option on this layer and click on the layer mask. This hides temporarily all the information in this layer. I'm sorry if I'm going a bit fast here, but like this is, I want to just show this quick thing like before we actually move into the ways how I usually blend the sky. So the technique I'm now showing you is just the easiest way to approach it. That usually works as a good starting point. But now basically with the black layer mask here, we are just hiding everything. If I hit Control I is a shortcut for inverting a mask. It just plays or toggles between these two. Okay, so now everything is visible because the mask is white. White basically reveals everything and black hides everything. And the powerful thing about this now is that I can take the brush tool and with the white color, I can start revealing the blending amount with the brush itself. So I don't really have to do anything else than just like start brushing here, but I don't want to brush with 100% opacity. And I usually use this flow here at around like 5 to 10% to have a bit of a softer approach to the blending. So now when I start brushing here, you can see that this effect is applying a bit slower to it. And if you want to know the difference between flow and opacity, just ask it at some point. I will explain it further in detail. But now basically we will just start applying this blending layer to the areas that require a bit of blending. So this now requires a bit of your own eye to understand where do we need this blending. We have a relatively late sunset here, and in this image the sun is clearly a bit higher above. So we need to add a bit more of this yellow light that is here into the areas that don't have it, which is this area here, which is this area here, and also here on this point. One good thing about this blending technique is that when you set it to multiply, it really blends the edges well. So we can see a bit of white here around the edges, but the moment I start brushing this in, it blends those edges really, really nicely. And you can see here we have some like weird, annoying like blue shades, but immediately when I start brushing here, I mean, we still have some, but it blends better with the scene when we zoom further out. So this is something I would do. Usually I also darken then the foreground a little bit. And actually in this case, that's pretty much all we need to start with. So like, that's a pretty easy way to start blending if you are super unexperienced with Photoshop. It's just simple as duplicating the sky, blurring it, applying it as a clipping mask to the landscape, and then starting to brush this into the areas where you think that blending is required. So this is a pretty easy way to do that. And this is definitely not like the most accurate way to do it. Like this is a good starting point somehow, like sometimes, but I will now show you how I will leave this, but I will show you how I would then further start to blend this together. So now we have two objects. This is already a pretty good starting point, and this doesn't only work for sky replacements. Like you need to now think it in a way that you would have, let's say, a night sky there or a night image and a person standing with basically the person image taken in daylight. So you would have such a massive contrast with an image that is taken during the day and an image that is taken during the night. With this multiply technique that I just showed, it works the exact same way for daytime images if you want to turn them like really dark. So use this as a starting point if you sometimes feel confused how to start. This usually works pretty well. Okay. But now one thing that I think is a bit off here is the brightness of the sky. We have quite strong highlights here, but to my eye, the sky just doesn't look bright enough. So there's a lot of, when it comes to blending, it's a lot about what your eye sort of sees. It's not that much about the techniques. It's more about what do you see that requires a bit more blending. I've developed an eye over the years, so for me, I immediately see, okay, this sky is too dark. It doesn't look bright enough yet for our foreground. So what I need to do is come here to, for example, curve or brightness and contrast, and I need to brighten this up. Simple as that. So I'll brighten this up a bit. Actually, maybe using brightness and contrast would be better, or even better using the camera filter. That's how you're going to get the most realistic results, but I'm just going to brighten this up a little bit here. So something like that. It actually doesn't need to be a lot brighter, but just a bit brighter. And these are very slight adjustments, but I think they do a lot for an image. I also maybe want to make the foreground a bit more faded, because the sky also has quite a lot of haze in it. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to apply a curve, clip mask this. I'm going to lift the blacks up here from a little bit. So this is now only affecting the foreground, not the sky. Take that in mind or in consideration. So I'm going to fade this up a little bit from the black. So here in the curves, the blacks are here on the left side and the highlights are here on the right side. And you can see if the curve here that in our image we have a lot of blacks, because here where the darker areas are, we have a lot of values that are darker, and then in the brighter areas we don't have that much. So the brighter areas here in the curve are most likely these areas here and a bit of the water and so on. So let's fade this a little bit and then bring it down a bit. This usually does quite a bit for an image as well. You don't want to go overboard with it. A lot of people do like a really strong curve like this, and then the image starts to immediately look over-edited. One tip that I have for everyone who's starting or who has already been editing in Photoshop for a while is that when you create an effect, usually as a thumb rule, take around 20 to 40% off from the opacity of the effect after you've done it. That way you will make sure that you're not over editing your stuff. So even here now when I make this effect, I probably will make it a bit stronger just to have like the playroom to adjust it later on, so I don't have to come back into the curve itself. I can just slide the opacity slider. So I usually make my effects a bit stronger than they have to be. Here I actually want to add a bit of this contrast to the highlights, because this blends the image better together with the sky. Something like that, and maybe adding a tiny bit of, actually let's see, cyan is not the color to go, but maybe adding a tiny bit of blue here could help as well. We actually, if we add any blue, we have to add it also to the sky. So maybe we won't do, maybe a tiny bit, okay. So now we have this. This is a bit too strong, so again, I'm gonna take it down about 40% or so. So that's a good thumb rule that I at least use quite often. Let me make the sky actually also a bit more blue. I will add a curve here to add a bit of blue to the sky. So now they will start to match a bit better. And I would say after this step, most of the stuff that I personally do is just brushing. I do the rest with brushing. I also would always like refine your masks later on a bit better. So for example here, these don't really look that good. We see some of these areas that have transparent stuff. Some of the edges don't look that great. So I would say like one really good rule of thumb as well is to always blur the mask like I showed in the hair technique. So with about like 20% strength on the blur, I would just come here and start blurring the edge. This usually blends the edges together way better, because when you are cutting a sky out from an image, you're always going to have harsh edges. So it's good to blend those. I went a bit overboard here now, but it's okay. We have a lot of glow here either way, so that's necessary. And then one thing that you need to be really careful with is all the edges in general. Like if you don't spend a lot of time into refining your edges, you're never really going to get realistic results. Like in real life, you would never have bugs like this. You would never have white edges like this. And you might think when you go further away, well, no one will see that. But if your mentality with photos is no one will see that times 20, then there's 20 mistakes in your image that will like make it look more unrealistic. So you need to always make sure that you are staying sort of true to yourself and staying sort of how do you say it? Like don't lose your motivation if you have to fix a lot of edges. It takes time, but you sort of just have to do that. I'm gonna actually use some of my brushes here. I'm gonna use my, let me see, I'm gonna use the refining brushes for my first brush bundle, and actually for some reason I don't have it here. It's probably here. Yeah, so refining or trees. Yeah, trees. I have this brush that I have created a really long time ago, and I use this often for like refining edges like this. So this is part of my first brush bundle. Actually, I'm currently under the process of combining all of my products, including my skies, including everything into one big bundle. So if you're interested in like getting all of my tools at some point, just know that before you pull the trigger now, there is a massive like bundle coming that will include everything. And the price will be quite a lot cheaper than buying everything separately. So keep an eye out for that. But right now I'm just like refining some of these edges. This is a really important part of the process, but we don't really have, actually here we have some sort of a mistake, but we can fix that soon. It's just the sky. So we don't really have a lot of mistakes here now. I could spend more time on it, but that's now enough for me. So just the stuff that I'm now showing you is just to make you understand that you have to sort of go deeper into the blending process than just like slapping a bit of color and fading on top of like elements in order to match them better. So this is like a pretty standard process I do, and it takes me probably max 5 minutes nowadays because I've done it so often. But just get comfortable with this workflow. Only the tools that you need for blending is curves, hue and saturation, and that's it. This is basically all you need. And then maybe the brush tool then further on. But most of the time, only like actual adjustments that you need to use is hue and saturation and curves. Even here now, most likely during this light, the ocean wouldn't have as cyan of a look anymore. So you could add a hue and saturation on top of this layer here, and you could select it, and you could change the like basically the amount of, let me actually see. Yeah, the amount of cyan you see. Of course, you don't have to be like 100% realistic with all the effects you do, but I think even in this case, because it's this late, I feel like it fits a bit better if the ocean is not like so cyan, because you usually see that cyan color only in like when the sky is a bit higher. So then the next things I will do is add a new layer here. I would set the layer to overlay, and I will select one of my fog brushes. I love this new one that I created here. So with this fog brush and with a bright yellowish color, I start brushing a bit of light here. So now the light is coming, of course, here from the left side. So you want to maintain the most light here at the horizon. I'm going now like really, really strongly in here, but I will show you soon why. So I will add like quite a bit of overlay fog. This is not real fog. This is just light I'm brushing with my fog brush. For some reason, I enjoy doing it more with my fog brush because it's less of a strong effect like that. So now that I've created that, that's of course like way too much in this whole thing. And one thing when you're blending is you need to remember that you can never blend everything in your image. You can't blend all the information. So even when I'm brushing light here, I don't want this light to be visible so much in the shadows, because shadows are not supposed to have as much light. So if I double click on this layer, there is this slider called blend if. There's two sliders. There's this layer and then underlying layer. And the easiest way for me to explain how this works is that we have a layer which affects everything below it. And if we want to blend the information of this layer with the information that is below here, we need to use the underlying layer. And we have two values here. We have the darks and we have the brights. If I start bringing this underlying layer part here to the right, you can see that our effect, our information in this layer is getting removed from the darker parts of the underlying layers. So it takes all of these layers below in consideration, and it starts to remove the information based on the different lighting levels. So here we have the darks. So we're now removing the light that we just brushed from the darker areas. Or we could do the opposite by brushing or like taking the effect away from the highlights. There's three different colors as well. So let's say we want to only take the red away from, or like the light away from the red tones. We could do it from here. But I usually find that the gray works the best. It's very like, it depends on the situation, but most of the time if you are creating effects like fog or light or whatever, you will just be using the gray slider here. I don't really even want to confuse you with the different values here because it's not really necessary. So one thing you need to know about this is that you can separate these points. So if you hold Alt or Option, you can separate these points and you can create a really faded look. So now you can see if I do it like this, it's a very rough edge here. But immediately when I separate them, it starts to feather that sort of removal a bit. And usually what I do here is that I want to take this effect that I brushed away from the darker areas because we don't need it there that much. And I usually do a pretty big fade on it as well. And when I hit OK, you can see that now the effect is applied to a lot of the highlighted areas, but not that much to the shadows. It is still visible in the shadows a bit, but not as much. And then I like to, again, take the opacity down like 20-30%, something like that, to just make sure that I'm not over-editing anything. So that is pretty much how I would approach this part. And then I would maybe add a bit of fog. So we could, again, add some fog. I would maybe add a bit of like bluish fog to this area. This is now just on a new layer. I'm going to brush a bit of fog. Fog is usually what ties everything together, at least in my work. So when I brush a lot of fog, that is usually what makes everything look a bit more cohesive. So this is the way how I love to blend. And I usually also actually brush haze with my fog brushes. So I pick a color from the sky and I just brush a bit of the color from the nearby areas to the landscape itself. So here what I'm doing, I'm picking a color from here and then I brush it a bit on the edges here And then again, here I pick the color from that part of the sky and I brush it there. It's probably a bit of a confusing thing to do, but this is what I've sort of found that works the best for me. And again, taking the opacity down helps a lot. So quite a lot of manual work. This is a bit of haze there now. It looks a bit more realistic and so on. And when we have blended these layers separately, we have the information on the sky. Let me actually group this. So Control G, and then here I'm gonna do Control G, and on this I'm gonna do Control G, and I'm gonna name this fog light, and this is gonna be our foreground, and this is gonna be our sky. Stay organized as well. This is really important. Right now I was a bit messy there, but just with a few groups and a few sort of adjustments here, I can make everything organized, and I know immediately if I need to adjust the sky to come here. And in the beginning when I started, I did zero organization, so I sometimes looked for like minutes for one layer. I was wondering like, what is causing this weird thing in my image? And then I kept on like clicking on all of them, and that is a very, very like stupid thing to do, because you can always stay organized. So yeah, stay organized. So when you have done the overall blending between these two layers, then you want to do like blend both, like everything together. And usually I do it in a way that I add a new group and I add a curve in here, and I like adjust both of these layers at the same time, the sky and the foreground, and I add a bit of blue to them. I add a bit of cyan to them. Again, remember that I'm always doing adjustments stronger than they are like needed to be. And then I take the opacity down quite a bit. So I don't need this strong of an effect here. I just need a little bit of it to tie them together. And then if I want, I can go further in here, add a new layer, set it to overlay. And then I can start like brushing a bit more of these like brighter areas here. And again, way stronger than it's supposed to be. I actually want to brush a bit of blue here as well, so it doesn't stay like so. Sometimes people tell me like, it's like, why do you create, even Michelle sometimes wonders like, why are you making everything look so bad? And then like you refine it afterwards. But it's just sort of the workflow that I've noticed is that the best way to do it is just to like overdo everything, and then you can like always adjust the opacity of it. It's way easier than like trying to fine tune the actual like doing. It's just the best to be sort of free with it. So I wouldn't say that this is necessarily the best blend I've ever done now, but at least it's like it looks like it would basically fit there. Not perfectly, but it's okay. So yeah, I would say that's pretty much it. Maybe here we could change the hues a little bit. Let me see. Maybe that's not necessary. So one thing that I still wanted to show is adding the wave here. So let me take a wave from one of these images. I think I would probably take a wave. Let me see. Wait a second. I will find an image that is usable. So I have Indonesia here. I think I went also to Kalinking on this trip. I've actually been there twice. It's such a beautiful place. So let's do Kalinking down. I don't have a lot of images from there, but something like this should work out. So let's take this. So one thing that I now did not show you is that usually I like start the blending process in Camera Raw already. So whatever objects I have, I try to match them already a bit in Camera Raw. And this is not really something I need to show you, because this is common sense. If you have two objects that look different from each other, the best way to start the blending process is already before you start editing or like combining them in Photoshop, is to make them look similar to start with. So let's say you have a day image and you have a night image. I would try to make the day image look already like night, because you can't make night into a day, but you can make day into night. So I would like already try to adjust the image according to the night in Camera Raw already. So here what I'm going to do now is that this is taken during daylight and this is during sunset. So all I need to do is take all the highlights off, maybe take the contrast away a bit, increase the temperature, decrease the exposure, maybe add a bit of magenta in there. I will take also the vibrance off a little, and then I will go to the color mixer, and I will change the hue of, I think it's the greens in this case, and take the saturation of them down, and maybe even the luminance down a bit. And I'm doing all of these adjustments because I want this to match a bit better to the sunset that I have. So even by like doing this much in Camera Raw, you don't have to do more than this. This is a good starting point already. We have a day image, which is just transformed a bit more towards an evening feeling. And since we only need this part of the image either way, this is like all we need to do. Another thing that you need to keep in mind is that if the images have a very different grain level, I will try to first, let's say there's a really grainy image and then an image that doesn't have any grain. I would do it in a way that I would try to take as much grain off from the very grainy image to the point that it doesn't start to look really mushy and soft. And then I would add a bit of grain to the image that doesn't have any grain. So in this case, we don't have almost any grain here. If I would actually add noise reduction here, let me actually do it. So I will add like a lot of noise reduction so we get rid of all the grain. And when I bring it here, and let me just quickly take only the wave. So I take the lasso tool and I create a selection roughly around the wave now, like that. And I just hit Ctrl J here. So Ctrl J duplicates whatever is inside a selection. This is really, really helpful. So you have an image and we want this wave out of it. So all I will do is select. You can either use masks, but I know already that I'm not going to need any of the surrounding area. So I would just duplicate it from this layer. So I hit Ctrl J and now we have the wave in a separate layer. Okay. And now what happened is some of these layers got basically off. I don't want to confuse you too much, so I'm just going to do it like that. Okay. So we have this wave here. And all we need to do now is that you can see that there's more grain in this image than in this image. So then later on, we would have to sort of bring those closer to each other, because otherwise it will look a bit stupid. We need to match the quality of images in order to blend them well. But now here, if I want to add this wave, I would just maybe make it a bit bigger. And I would change the perspective a bit. So I made it a little bit bigger, and you can get to like to transform tools by hitting Ctrl T. This brings you to all the tools. And if you hit here with right mouse button, you can select from perspective, distort, skew, rotate, scale. You can do like whatever from here. Warp is probably the most helpful most of the time. So with warp, you can grab a point from an image and sort of, just warp it. Just like make a different shape out of the stuff that you have currently there. So I would maybe do something like that. I would also maybe change the perspective a bit. And since the wave in this beach would go like a bit diagonally, if that's a word. I don't know how to pronounce it. We have to sort of mimic that. So I will bring it up from the left side a little bit like this. So it looks like the wave is bigger from the front than it is from here. And then I can actually lengthen it a bit as well, like that. So probably something like this. Okay. And now all we need to do is add a mask here and start masking away these sharp edges. And then we have a wave there. So let's start taking this now off from here. Just like that, and the same from the areas above. And I'm not too worried about this part now because I can use my splash brushes to fix that. So something like that. Okay, so now we have a wave there. It's a bit too bright, so we might have to fix that. And we also need to add a bit of those splashes back. So all I need to do now is select a splash brush, and I think I have them in my first brush bundle here. Yeah, so I can use, for example, this one, and then I can just bring some of these splashes back here. Simple as this. I use my brushes all the time. Some people have told me that like you're just selling tools that you never use yourself, but actually use them like 24/7 in everything that I do. So now we added a bit of those splashes back. And then we can again, I will show you, we only need hue and saturation and curves. I think that this part of the wave is a bit too bright. So all I need to do is add a hue and saturation to this, clip mask it by holding Alt or Option on Mac, and then using this hand tool or the colors from here to pick the color. I usually just use the hand and click, and that shows what it determines it as. I only need to shift the color of the cyan a bit more towards yellow, maybe darken this color a little bit, desaturate it, and yeah, that already fits a lot more to the ocean we have now. And then we add a curve, and the same thing here. Maybe we take the highlights down a little bit, fade it up a bit, and then darken it. And that's all we need. It's a very slight adjustment, but it just makes the wave fit there a bit better. And simple as that. That's it. Now I could, let me actually duplicate this and delete. This is what we started with, and this is what we got. And all the principles I now showed you works with blending. I'm not gonna answer any other blending related questions now during this live anymore, because this is all you need. This is literally all you need for blending. Hue and saturation, curves. Use this trick that I showed with the sky, because usually you want to blend everything according to the sky, not the other way around. So use this trick to get started with, and then curves and hue and saturation. Curves and hue and saturation. In some of my older courses, I did a bit too many like excess steps. You don't really need as many steps as what I used to use. So hue and saturation is usually good. And two last things I'm going to show you is that you can blend with the brush. So if I now would want to blend everything together even a bit better, I would probably start creating a bit of a vignette. And I usually create a vignette with like a dark blue color. So I just select a darkish blue color. I put my flow to around 5% or so. And then I just brush a bit of a vignette here. And this usually ties together a lot of the image as well. So brushing a little bit of a vignette here manually helps. And again, keep in mind I'm doing it way stronger than needed. I am gonna double click, take this away from the highlights, because you can see I brushed it above here, the sky, and it looks faded. So I'll just take it away from the brightest points of the image. And then I will bring the opacity down. And now we have a little bit of a softer edge here. And I know I went really fast, but this is, if something you need to take away from this live, it is that there's no need to be super, super detailed with all the adjustments you do. The best way, the most important thing that increased the speed of my editing in Photoshop was to be actually more rough. Be as rough as I can and do things as quickly as I can, and then adjust the opacity instead. You can get away with a lot if you know these little tricks like the blend dip sliders and so on. Of course, you can do it. You can do it like really, really detailed if you want to. But if you want to save time, it makes sense to do everything a bit rougher, at least from my own experience. I'm sure there's some people who like literally can't stand doing it a bit messier, but I just found out that I save so much time doing it like this. So this is really important, blending a bit of color inside the areas here that needs to be a bit darker. And then another thing is to set your blending mode to color on a new layer and starting to color blend everything together. So for example here, I don't really like how on this area I have so much green. So if I would want to blend this, instead of using all of these curves and so on, I like to just use the color adjustment on adjustment mode here, or the blending mode here. So I just pick a color from a nearby area, and then I just brush this color to that area with the layer set to color. So what this does, it just changes the color of stuff. It doesn't change the pixels, it just sort of brushes and recolors everything. Same thing is here, like if I want to make this area a bit more yellow, or let's say a bit more orange, I could just brush that there instead. And this is what I use like the most probably out of all of the blending. So if I want to make this a bit blue, more blue, maybe the beach a bit more blue, the whole like bottom part of the image, maybe the top of the sky a bit more blue, I do it with this because this gives you the most freedom. And again, remember to take the opacity down. You never want to like hide what's been there originally completely. So I hope that helped in terms of the blending. I know that was a lot, but that's basically all the information you need for blending. I will keep the stream, of course, up so you can watch it later because I went pretty quick. And what I'm going to do now is just move forward. I will do like I think we already have like 1 hour and 15 minutes here, but since this now took so long, because I wanted to like emphasize the blending part, because I feel like that's the most asked questions I get about Photoshop itself. So I'm still gonna do a few. So yeah, let's move on. Let's see what people have asked here. Thanks everyone, by the way, for having the patience to listen and watch. I really appreciate it. I love teaching. I get a bit carried away actually when I teach, because I'm really passionate about teaching actually. It's something that I think I've had my best moments when I'm able to show someone how to do something. I get the most joy out of that. Like, it's cool to learn something on your own as well, but for me it's really cool to be able to teach or show another person how to do it and actually see those people understanding it. And I've had the most fun doing that when I did one workshop, for example, and I got to teach people like one-on-one. And yeah, it's something that I really enjoy doing, and that's why I get a bit carried away with it as well. Like, even here I could have just shown like really quickly a few examples on how to blend, but instead I went the whole process. Like I said, I probably wouldn't, so, but no, we did. Let's see. I think I'm just going to continue where we were left off. So how do you blend images seamlessly? That we covered now. What is the best way to match colors? That we did now. And can you give a brief information about the blending modes? Yes. So this I'm going to do really quickly. I'm actually not going to spend any attention on this almost at all, because you don't need any... now, just listen. You need multiply. Sometimes you need screen, overlay, and color. That's pretty much it. In certain cases, if you go to 3D, you might need linear dodge, and also in some higher, I'm not sure if higher end is the right word to say it, but the most important sort of thing is that you remember to like not overthink all of this. I think I got now carried away because I forgot to turn the program on and then I got confused. But what I was about to say is normal, of course, multiply, then screen, overlay, and color. Those are the only ones. And I also use luminosity, but for a very specific purpose. I will show that as well. So there's like very good videos on YouTube that explain super carefully what all of these do. But basically these are divided into groups. You have things that darken, you have things that lighten, and then you have things that just basically blend on top of what is here. So for example here, these things hide everything that is dark in your scene. So let's say I would have this is actually very simple to show. So if I have a black circle and I have a white circle and I set this more to screen, you can see that the black gets removed. So all of these modes here get rid of all of the darker shades of the effect that you apply it to. This is now just black and white, and then all of these ones here on the darkened side, they remove all the brighter stuff, so all the whites. So this is pretty much the most simple way to explain it. It's stuff that remove darker shades and then stuff that remove brighter shades. And the best way to sort of use this is just to toggle between to see what looks the best. But some really specific usages would be, for example, when you are brushing light. For this, I would always use overlay. So with overlay, you can... well, the difference is this. If I brush this set to normal, it brushes actual color on top of this part. But when I set it to overlay, it blends and brightens the pixels that are there with the color that I'm using. So some people could actually like that effect. Maybe not actually with this color, but if I would take the opacity down again, like some people would like that glow. I don't necessarily like that much, but yeah, that's simple as that. Just brushing a bit of glow coming from there with overlay. So that's one. Then we have screen. Screen I would use most of the time for stuff when I actually want to get black rid of from my images. It's so easy. Let's say we have a super simple scene like black sky, and we have a moon in the middle, and then we have a couple stars here and there. Okay, these are now stars, beautiful stars. So when I hit this to screen, it gets rid of all the black but keeps all the stars and the moon. This will be one usage, for example, for the screen. And I basically don't use it for anything else. Every single time I have a sky image and I want to just get rid of the background in the sky and keep the moon and the stars, I just use screen. Simple as that. It's super quick. It comes with a few drawbacks, but it's the quickest way to do it. So yeah, here you can also see now really well, like screen removes all the darker shades, and here like multiply and all these like keep the brighter, remove the brighter parts. Then which else did I use? I mean overlay and soft light are pretty similar. Soft light is a bit, the way how I like to think it is a bit less strong of an effect from overlay. It's like minus 50% opacity from overlay sort of. I don't really want to even get into detail with all these unnecessary ones. You don't really need them. But then another one that is really cool is the color one. I just showed this already. So with this you can brush color that you choose. Actually, so for example, if we have blue, with this you can brush blue color into, and it actually transforms the whole image into blue if necessary. Now everything is blue. It's a bit different shades of blue, but it is blue. So this basically keeps the texture there and keeps the lightness levels, but it just transforms the color to the shade of blue that is there. So that's really cool. This I use for blending, as I said. And then another one is luminosity. Luminosity is actually one that I only use for color lookups. So let's say I take a candlelight look from here and I set this to luminosity. That's a really interesting effect. So like that's a very specific usage for it. So that's just something that I learned from a course from Follow Me Away. Yeah, so that luminosity I use for color lookup tables, it often comes up with pretty interesting results. If I'm 100% honest, I wouldn't like out of my brain just remember all the technical descriptions for what these do, but I think like me just showing how to use them and how I use them is the most important thing. So that's all for blending modes. How do you convert image into painting form? Okay, this is easy. I actually now want to show you something cool. So I am going to quickly go here to my Stream Deck and change this to Photoshop. So I've created different tools. So I'll actually show here. So if I go here to tools, I can select all of the tools from my Stream Deck if I want. I remember all the shortcuts on my keyboard though, so like using this is maybe a bit more of a fancy thing that I wouldn't end up using as often. But yeah, I did that, and then I have all the shortcuts here, so I can click just Ctrl Z on here and it will like redo. I can actually let me show you. So in Photoshop, now that I have, for example, the button here on my Stream Deck, I can hit Ctrl J and just by clicking duplicate my layers as many times as I want. I also have a Ctrl G, groups, like I have all of the shortcuts that I need here on my keyboard. I also have a thing called duplicate all. So if I come here, you can see duplicate all. What this does, it's actually an action that does multiple things. It first combines everything, then it duplicates it. So I can hit duplicate all. It duplicates everything that is under here, and then it creates a duplicate of whatever the information is here. So these are really things that you don't really need. It just speeds up your workflow a little bit. I use actually these a lot. I can add a new layer from here by just hitting new layer button. I can collapse all of my groups by clicking here. So like if I have bunch of groups open and I don't want to like one by one go here, I just hit collapse groups. That does that. I can bring my rulers up and down if I want by hitting here. I have clipping mask, so I can add a clipping mask by just clicking here. It's pretty cool. I don't use it as much as I probably should, because this actually speeds up quite a lot of things. So if I would like learn to use this really well, then that would be pretty cool. So if, let's say I, for example, want to duplicate this like a few times, I would first hit Ctrl J button here. I select all of them, then I hit Ctrl G, and then I could duplicate this group and I could combine it. And now I have all the information inside this group, and I have a duplicate of everything that is inside here as a combined layer above. It's a bit tricky, but it works really well. I really love that. Was there anything else that I wanted to show? Well, one thing that I have done here is frequency separation, for example, which is used a lot for portrait retouching. So if I want to do that, I just hit a button. It creates it for me. That's it. So it just created a frequency for me here. So these are just interesting things that I personally have found fun. They're not necessarily super useful. They're just fun to use. Was there something else I wanted to quickly show? Well, maybe the menu shortcut. So if I want to go to camera raw, instead of going to filter and hitting camera raw, I just click the camera raw button on my Stream Deck, and that opens the camera raw for me. I can add motion blur by hitting a button. I can add Gaussian blur by hitting a button. I can go to the liquify tool by the press of a button. That's actually, this is the liquify tool. What else? I have the select a mask here, as I said, at a button. So yeah, puppet warp. This is a really helpful one actually. And then dust and scratches. I use this sometimes to remove stars. Then I can also like open different programs. If I want to add like a color range, I can do from here as well, which is really cool. But I can also add plugins. So I want to edit this now in a different program. I just click a button and it starts opening that program for me here, and it opens this image in the program. So this is like really cool stuff that I'm like quite excited about when I get a bit deeper into using it. But yeah, that's that. Now, actually, I got so carried away that I forgot again what I was supposed to do. I'm so sorry about my like excitement when it comes to stuff like this. Before we do that, let me just check if there's any questions. How to get energy effect, color was totally changed, blah, blah, blah. Hey man, I hope you're doing well. Also, your microphone is pretty quiet, especially since your transition sounds are really loud for those who have turned up our volume to hear you. Okay, this is fixed easily. I hope that's a bit better. That's actually probably a lot better. I'm sorry that I forgot to do that. So now the microphone should be a bit louder. Hopefully it's not too loud. Then thanks for this, really cool. No worries, I really love doing this. So this is fun for me and hopefully informational for you. In 3D you might use HDRI to sphere and low light. How in Photoshop do you get composites to blend right without reducing the palette to looking color graded? Well, I think I pretty much answered that question by showing this whole process. So if you weren't here when I showed this process, just look back to the stream when it's uploaded. Thanks for your tips. I love using Photoshop and you helped me a lot. No worries. Ctrl-Shift-Alt-E duplicates all and merges them. Yeah, that's true. I just use that shortcut in the Stream Deck. I just click in and it does that. So yeah. Hey, you can use Ctrl-Alt-Shift-E to combine all. Yeah, but I think let me say Ctrl-Alt-Shift-E. Yeah, it does that, but yeah, actually that's the shortcut I use in my Stream Deck. I just like I don't think about it because I always use the Stream Deck for it. So yeah, I could do Ctrl-Alt-Shift-E, but even like clicking that for me it's really awkward. Ctrl-Shift-Alt-E. Like I feel like I need to put my hand in like a really weird position in order to hit that. So for me, it comes more naturally to use the Stream Deck. It's completely unnecessary to have this thing if you actually like get good with shortcuts. And I'm pretty good with shortcuts, but just some shortcuts are annoying. And there's no shortcuts for everything in Photoshop, and you're also limited with the type of shortcuts you can use. So using the Stream Deck has helped me a lot to like open stuff like camera and so on. I mean, Ctrl-Shift-A is pretty easy, but I never really learned to use that. So just keep clicking the button is easier for me. But yeah, someone asked if I can change this thing into a painting. Yes, I can. This is very easy. We can go to filter gallery. And from the filter gallery here, actually, before I do that, there's this one thing. If I open this in Camera Raw filter, you need to remember that it doesn't only like apply or try to apply this filter to what's visible here in the canvas. You need to remember that when you are enlarging images, or for example here the sky we enlarged, we have information, it's just not visible here behind. So in order for you to only adjust the stuff here, you would actually hit M on your keyboard to take the, or actually easier way, this is way easier. You just hit C to get the crop tool, and then you click here and you delete cropped pixels. This now deletes all the information here, but please remember to only do this at the end. If you do this like during your editing process, you might lose some information that you further want to bring back in. So it's really important to do this only at the end when you are like editing the image in Camera Raw or something. So with the crop tool and hitting delete crop pixels and clicking OK, that's how you remove it. Now if I click to the Camera Raw filter, it opens only the image and not anything around it because we cropped it now off. So painting, let's go to filter gallery, and from here we can basically go to paint jobs, or we can do poster edit. Actually, there's like so many different ways to turn an image into a painting. I would say like the best way to do it is to just use these. It's actually pretty like fairly straightforward. There's a bunch of like, you can add like a different effect and then add another effect on top of that if that's something that you're into. Like I could add a new effect layer here and then add that on top. This is actually something that a lot of people forget, is that with filter gallery, you can add multiple effects on top of each other without always, like I see quite a lot of people doing this, that they like first apply something, then they come back to filter gallery and then they apply it again. But you can just apply it here on top of each other if necessary. So I would start with like maybe coming here to the filter gallery and play around with some of these, let's see, brush strokes, if some of these look okay. Actually, let me see. Angled strokes, maybe that's good. And I like literally, when someone asks me like how can I turn something into a painting, like this is just me improvising. Like I never need to turn anything into a painting, but this is, I know that this is the way how to do it. I don't necessarily know like the techniques to make it look like absolutely like a realistic painting, but using these sort of filters is your like best bet sort of. Actually, this is pretty good for it. Playing with this, actually let's take the sharpness off all the way and then play with the direction, maybe with the stroke length, and then we will add another layer here on top, and then we will do like, let me try something else, maybe palette knife, and then here I will do like a bit of a stroke. Let's do zero detail on it and make it really soft, and then yeah, like you can sort of start to get more of a painterly vibe to this. Even now if I hit OK, like we sort of lose the way how lose the look here, but like that already from closer looks a bit more like a painting. Honestly, it's nowhere near there yet, but you get the point. Just use those filters on top of each other. Find like a few filters that for you feels like the style you want to do, because there's so many different painting styles. There's abstract ones, there's like ones that try to achieve realism. So if you want to turn something into a painting, that is probably the way to go. But if you want to learn like an actual strategies someone else has optimized already, I would rather just like YouTube or find a course about how to turn images into cartoons, for example. I'm sure you could learn it that way. Actually, the logo I have here in the bottom of the stream, so you can see that little thing that like has that shimmering effect going past it every now and then. I did that by just pen tooling and transforming like an image of my face into a cartoon. I had to do it manually. It took a long time, but I like it. Let me change this quickly. Wait a second. Default profile stream and then chat. I actually enjoyed doing this stream a lot. Hopefully you are enjoying it as well, although I'm like really all over the place always when I get excited. There was some other stuff that we needed to now do. Wait a while. I also need to go to the gym soon, so I should probably stop. But I still want to show a few things. I feel like I didn't show enough yet. But I could do a part 2. I could do a part 2 stream as well. What's the difference between opacity and flow? This is really important for everyone to know. So let's start with a white canvas. I would just create a 4000 by 5000. I actually use always 4000 by 5000 for my canvases. It's just how I've always done it. It's enough resolution for anything pretty much. Unless you want to do like a really big print, which I'm not prioritizing. So yeah. Yeah, opacity and flow. This is simple. Let's create 2 layers. Let's first do opacity at 50%. Okay, so we'll do opacity at 50% with 100% black. Okay, let's draw a stroke. Then we will do opacity at 100% and flow at 50%. And I'll brush here. Okay, so the difference here basically is that flow determines how quickly you will brush something to 100%. That is probably the easiest way to explain it. Flow just determines the speed on how quickly it basically draws something to 100% color. Opacity just is a rough number of the percentage. So let me simplify even more. So I have a brush. If my opacity is at 50% and my flow is at 100%, if I keep brushing here and I don't lift my mouse, we get only 50% of that black in here. Okay, as long as I brush like this without lifting my mouse button, it's going to be 50%. The moment I lift my mouse and I brush again, we get another 50% on top. Okay? And then again, we get another 50% on top. But you don't get any gradual increase. And the way how flow works, let's put my flow to like 20%, is that without raising my brush, I can shortly or like slowly start brushing it to 100%. And this is really good when you want to gradually bring an effect in. Opacity can be good if you actually want to make something like only 50% less, for example, visible or whatever. But I like flow because with this you can like brush in effects really well. I will show you how different it will look if I use my fog brushes, for example. If I take this fog brush and I brush this in with 50% opacity, I'm gonna get a look like this. Okay, and no matter how much I raise my my mouse, it's just gonna keep brushing 50%. But if I do it the other way around, that I put my flow, let's say like 20%, I can like make the center of it darker and the edges are gonna be a bit less. And I can keep decreasing it and brushing even less here on the edges. And then here in the center, I wanna have really thick fog. And this is just a more natural way of doing it. If you do it with opacity, you will never really get that good result. So a thumb rule for anyone who wants to do this type of work I do, always make sure your opacity is at 100% and you only use the flow. So yeah, this is very easy. If you want to get better like painterly feelings to your images, use flow. The difference is just that opacity is as a hard number of opacity, and flow is just sort of, I guess in my brain the easiest way to think about it is that it just like brings up the color gradually to 100%. Like if you brush for a long time, then you're gonna eventually have that 100% that you would have here on the opacity immediately. So yeah, that's the difference with between those. Let's see what's different between opacity and flow. How to get the energy effect? Are we up for a challenge? Let me show you a simple energy effect. Let's start from black. And I'm only going to do the effect, by the way, now. So first off, if we want to brush some sort of energy effect, we probably would have some sort of a faded bluish, what I'm at least visioning now is a bluish or like maybe cyan-ish glow. So let's just brush a bit of glow to start with in the middle. Something like that. Okay. Now we have a bit of glow. Then I'm going to create another layer. I'm going to use my fog brush to brush a little bit of something in the middle, maybe with more color, with less flow. So a little bit of something like this in the middle. I actually have no clue what you mean with energy effect. This is just what I would envision energy effect to look like. So just with my fog brushes, I'm brushing a bit of overall, like, whatever, just a bit of fog here. Something like that, okay? Then I would maybe take my flare brushes. Now my camera died. Fuck, I'm actually not showing how to do it. This is actually embarrassing now. I forgot to change it. I thought that this time I would remember it actually completely, but I forgot it now. So let's go back to the flow and opacity. Sorry. So flow and opacity. Let's do it quickly again. I feel so annoyed about those. Like when I forget to do it, then like that becomes like really annoying to me immediately. I'm like, now the stream is like completely BS because I forgot one thing. I'm sorry about that. I will redo all of that. So if you are still watching, I'm sorry. I will show it. I'll actually change the battery to my camera as well. So just a second, I will grab a new battery. I need to get a dummy battery that charges it completely. I just haven't gotten to do it yet. So just a second, I will get a new battery. I actually have no idea where I have my batteries. Maybe this one has some. Just a second. Now immediately at the same time everything goes downhill. Okay. The battery needs to be changed and let's see if that has battery. Is it working? Yay. And it's full. Is it full? What is the camera saying? It's saying that it's overheating. Well, I don't care if it's overheating. The R5 is always overheating, so. No, the audio is probably not tripping. I was just further away from the microphone, so it might have cut off a little bit. But let me now show the opacity and flow again. I'm so sorry. So opacity. Let's do 50%. Brush it here. You can see that we're only getting 50% of the color, okay? And no matter how long I brush, we only get 50%. The moment I lift my mouse button and brush again, then we get another 50%, and again another 50%. Okay, simple as that. But with flow, I can bring this effect in gradually. So let's put opacity to 100% and flow to 50%, and then start brushing. You can see that we're slowly getting to 100%. I usually keep this quite low. So let's say I want to brush like a bit of light here and a bit of light here. I get like gradually stronger and stronger and stronger. And this is what I meant when I said that like we are gradually getting to the 100% color. So flow determines the speed of what the color comes in with, and opacity is just a hard set opacity amount that will not change unless you lift your mouse button. And I just think it gets really confusing. Let's say you are brushing light in with 50% opacity, and you brush a bit of light there, and then when you brush light to another point, you have a really harsh edge between these two, because it's 50% now here, 50% under here, but then in the middle it mixes weirdly together. And with flow, everything mixes together like really smoothly. Like I can brush here, and like everything like sort of blends smoothly to each other like that. So yeah, I just use flow. It's just easier for me to do everything with flow because I brush a lot of light in and a lot of fog in. So yeah, I hope that cleared. I'm sorry again about forgetting to turn the screen here. Let's do the energy now again. So all I did basically here is I brushed a bit of, let's redo the whole thing. So I brushed a little bit of blue light with opacity set to really low. So I brushed a little bit of blue here. So this is now the so-called energy effect that I want to do. Again, I'm just improvising, so this might end up looking like shit. So let's click here on one of my fog brushes, and then we will brush a bit of like energy type of effect around here. So we would have the center of the energy source here, and then we would have a bit of these areas around that like sort of become energized. And this is, I'm going to show it to the whole canvas now. You can then just do this as like a simple effect if needed, but I'm not just going to show it as a show. I'm actually just like shifting the colors here and gradually making it brighter. Like the edges are a bit darker and then the center gets like gradually brighter and brighter. And I was left off using my flare brushes. I would probably use like this flare brush I have. I would set it to like overlay or something like that to create that brighter light. And then I would just like brush it here to have a little bit like a center. I will actually do it probably a few times. And maybe take the opacity off from that a little bit. So I'd have something like that. I could even maybe use my lightning brushes. So I have some lightning brushes here. I could grab these. Actually these I would probably then blend in somehow differently. But I'll maybe use like that there. And then maybe use another one here. Actually not do the same layer. So like something like that. Just wait, it looks bad now, but it will still make sense. So this here, just like change all of this. I'm going really quick here because this is just a random example now. So we would have like a bit of an energetic center here of lightning. And this is all done with my custom brushes. If you want to get them, you can find them on my website. Probably there's a link in the bio of this stream as well. So if you're interested in those and you don't have them yet, then just feel free to get them. They're like $30 or something. So let me actually now create a mask here, and then I'm gonna fade this effect away a little bit. So why is it not brushing away? Oh, because it's a duplicate, I feel. There we go. So I'll probably like brush this effect a little bit away from here, and then with the fog brush, I would maybe, let's do like this fog brush. I will maybe like take the effect even further off a little bit from areas. So we have like a bit of lightning here and there. And it's not really visible everywhere, but it sort of like blends into the energy source, if that makes sense. So none of the effects ever look good, like straight from the get-go. Like you sort of have to force them to look good. Like you have to do a lot of blending work in order to make some of the lightning strikes and stuff to look better. Like this is like quite sort of easy way to do it. People are saying that I sound robotic. Sounds like a robot. Just me, or is the audio tripping? Oh god, why? Like so many problems appeared at the same time. The video went out. I forgot to change the screen, and now I'm sounding robotic. It could be that my internet connection is getting worse. Maybe it's also a good time soon to end. I'm sorry about this. I don't really know what to do. I'm not a professional with streaming, so it's really hard for me to identify why there is an issue. If anyone knows what the cause for a robotic voice during a stream would be, I've had it before. It has nothing to do with my microphone. So it's more so with the bit rates of the stream and so on. So I'm sorry. I actually feel so disappointed always when something doesn't work like I want. In these streams, for example. But now we like blended these lightning strikes in there. Sorry if I'm a robot still. We blended them in. We can maybe select them. So the way how, I don't know, let's just add a clipping mask here. Let's change this layer to overlay. And we can brush a bit of light into some parts of this lightning strike again. Just to increase the sort of lightning effect from the lightning strike. So something like that. Packet loss could be the, yeah, most likely it's that. I'm not really the happiest when it comes to the internet connection here in Germany. It's actually quite bad at times. So I've been trying to figure that out, but it's sort of a thing that I don't know. In Finland, I didn't have any issues with the internet. Here, it seems constant. By the way, I forgot to explain what I'm doing now. So now I created a new layer, set it to overlay, and And now I'm brushing a bit of light to the center of this thing, but also to the like ends of the lightning strikes or something like that, just to create a bit of light. Maybe I'm going to create a bit of light like overall the whole thing like this. So I'm getting closer somewhere, I think. I at least feel like. We have a bit of bending here. This is just because I'm brushing like on top of black color here. Would then maybe use a bit of a thicker. Maybe I should actually use my splash brushes or even my star brush. I feel like my star brush or dust brush could work well. I would actually go here to fireflies and particles and just use my dust brush. Okay. So I'm gonna add a bit of like these dust things here and there, just to like increase a bit of the effect. Maybe like some of the energies, like I don't know, disintegrating here, like something like this. I don't know, just something I felt like would fit here. Like a bit of energy coming out of there, and maybe gradually those particles get bigger. And as I said, I'm improvising, so I don't really like know what I'm trying to achieve here. This is just what came to my mind when someone mentioned energy effect, and it probably looks still horrible, but I feel like with a bit of optimization here, we can make it look even better. Actually, we can use my star brush then to add a bit of like sharper particles here, especially here in the center. Let's keep adding that. And I feel like here in the center we need some sort of flare. I think we have more flares, so we could use like a flare like this. Maybe this is the best. So add another overlay layer and then add like a flare in the middle. We could actually add maybe another flare as well, and then just change the direction of this and set this to overlay. And we could keep duplicating this to the point where we have like multiple ones of these, something like that. Then we can combine these and set it to overlay, and then we can create a mask here, and then with a gradient, with a radial gradient, and this set to transparent and black. Sorry, I'm going fast again. With this, we can create like, why did this change now? Yeah, so if I hit reverse here, we can like fade a bit of those edges away. So we only get this effect in the center, something like that. And then the opacity we can take down again, something like this. And then here we could add sun rays, but that's not really something that we're looking for, I think. Maybe this galaxy type of brush thing could work well here. We can add this to overlay and then just click. Yeah, so this is definitely the vibe that we are looking for, like adding a bit of this like clustered something here. But yeah, I'm basically just using my brushes. So this is a good marketing for my brushes as well. Pun intended, like you can basically get this type of results by just using brushes. That's it. I wouldn't say I'm proud of this at all, but this is just how I would start creating a energy source. Okay, I'm not gonna even go further into it. This is just how I would probably do it. I know audio is a helicopter. I'm gonna stop the stream either way soon, so that's that. If you have any questions about the energy thing, or if you want me to try something more to it, feel free to let me know. Yeah, I know. Sorry, everyone. I know about the audio. It's worse now. It should get better at some point, but I think I'm either way done for today. I will probably do a part 2 stream. Yeah. So definitely some things that I need to still like remember to check. I actually tried to study about the audio earlier already. Like not earlier today, but a few weeks ago, and I couldn't really find a solution yet. Someone asked me, how do I like German people and Germany so far? I haven't really gotten a feeling of the German people, to be honest, yet. Because of Corona, I've just been inside most of the time, which is super sad. I haven't had any issues with Germany, though it's very busy. It's 16 times busier on average than Finland, so that's been something that I've needed to adjust to a lot. Yeah, I guess, what's the best way to export an image in Photoshop? So I would say if you're exporting for web, I would just go to export, export and export, say for web. And from here, I would just make the quality along like 50 to 60%. This just makes it more web optimized. You want your images for web to be like less than 500 kilobits. So by decreasing the size here, maybe you also don't usually need like this much resolution for internet. So I could do like this at 30%. And it still looks amazing at 30% as well. And now it's 104 kilobytes. So with this save for web thing, you can optimize it for web usage. And I use this all the time for my websites if I want my website to respond better and load better. So this is something that I do every time. And then if you want to export it just to your computer, I would first make sure that you are working in RGB color and then on an 8-bit channel. Anything other than RGB and 8-bit, it's gonna look super different on your what do you call that, on your phone most of the time. But to be honest, like people are so confused with how you can match colors between your phone and your screen. And the thing is, phone screens, the technology is just so different. You will never be able to get 100 million% the same colors on your phone as on your computer, and that's just something that you need to learn to live with. I personally do it in a way that I just optimize my phone, my computer screen to match as much with my phone screen as possible. I do that manually. I don't use a calibrating device for that because I think eye is the best way to tell. So I just manually go to the settings, change the color temperatures and stuff a bit from my monitor to match it better. But when you are exporting or creating a project, make sure that this is set to sRGB or Adobe RGB. I used to work in Adobe RGB all the time because I had a monitor that supported like 90 something plus, like 97 or something crazy percent of Adobe RGB. So I used to work in that, but that was mainly because I was printing my work as well. So sRGB is good for web. RGB is the best for web purposes. And I would always use at least 4000 by 5000 pixels. Resolution doesn't really matter here. I just keep it at 300. Then when you save, if you want, actually Photoshop changed this. I hate it. They made different things. They usually only had the save as option, but now they have save a copy and save as. And save a copy is nowadays the way how you can get into the JPEGs and stuff. So if you want to just save a quick thing, I would always save a JPEG. But if you want to save a lossless format that you would then further on edit, for example, in Lightroom, which I think is stupid because Photoshop has a built-in Lightroom camera. So yeah, if you want to like send a really high quality uncompressed file, I would save as a TIFF. For web, I usually use actually, nowadays I use WebM quite a lot, especially for videos. But for photos, JPEG or PNG, it's very simple. Like, you can't really do much wrong there. After all, what matters is the color settings are right and that you have enough resolution, and then you should be good to go. So yeah, that's that. I think I'm gonna like stop the stream like very soon. I'm not gonna show anything in Photoshop, so I'm just gonna chat here for a while. Is the audio, by the way, still really bad? Yeah, okay. Well, I don't think it makes any sense to continue the stream if we're having the issue with the audio. I will continue on the stream. I'll do a part 2 because I felt like I spent a bit too much time on certain like aspects. But yeah. also the transition audio I heard, so not a mic problem. Yeah, the exact same issue I had last time. I tried to decrease the bitrate for this stream, but I guess that didn't work out. So yeah, I don't know. If anyone knows more about streaming, could you message me after this stream is done and like troubleshoot it with me? I would really appreciate it, because I don't really know how I can fix this, and I've tried researching. Like I'm usually, if I run into an issue, I'm a person who tries to solve it myself. But if I can't solve it myself, it like really frustrates me. So if anyone could help me, I would really appreciate it. Mike asked me, how have you been? I've been actually not doing the best, to be honest, within the past few months. But when I went to Finland and came back, now I'm like feeling way better. But there were some things that happened here in Germany within Michelle's family that basically just a close person passed away. So it's been a bit hard to handle that. And I had so many like plans of doing everything, but that sort of pushed everything back naturally. So yeah, it hasn't been the best year so far, but yeah, I guess I'm completely fine. I really like enjoy doing what I do. Like everything is sort of all right. It's just when you are locked up for 6 months, it takes a toll on every person ever. So yeah. Love to have a chat every now and then. Yeah, like just message me, Mike, whenever. I'm always down to chat. Yeah, I saw it. So sorry to hear. Hopefully you two are doing a bit better now. Yeah, I mean it's better. It's of course hard to handle stuff like that, but yeah, you sort of just move on, and things usually get a bit better over time. But yeah, I'm also thinking of setting up a Discord server to just chat with all of you whenever, because quite often I'm just editing alone, silently. So just talking to like-minded people while I'm editing could be cool, and at the same time, like, it doesn't hurt to, like, I don't really mind teaching while I edit on like I love doing it. It just takes me way longer to get stuff done, of course, when I'm editing and explaining at the same time. But like these streams are a lot of fun for me. I don't care if there's one person or like 100 person or 1,000 people watching at the same time. I enjoy it a lot. But yeah, I will probably set up a Discord server at some point, but I think I'm gonna cut this stream off now. We're having a bit of technical issues. My head is starting to hurt a little, and I still need to go to the gym. So yeah, thanks everyone for watching. I will most likely see you within this week still. Michelle is gone the whole week in Turkey with a friend. I have a lot of business related stuff that I need to get done, but if I can get that done in time, there's going to be a part 2 to this stream even this week already. So looking forward to that if I have the time. But yeah, thanks everyone for